Naturopathic.
What's up? Another episode of Ripple Effect Podcast. I'm your host, Rick Otherwise, also known as Ricky Branson. A great episode for you today. Today we have another Swapcast, another roundtable discussion with returning guest, Dr. Kendra Becker, Tim James from Chemical Free Body, and the Health Hero podcast, and a returning guest from way back in the day, Nancy Guberti. It was awesome to reconnect with her and have her join us for this conversation. We talked about health, we talked about the coronavirus, we talked about what's going on in the world right now. So we talk about everything that involves health, nutrition, physical and mental health, disinformation in regards to immune systems and coronavirus and all that stuff. So hopefully you really enjoyed this podcast. If you want to connect with any of these guests, I'll have links in the show description to all their social media accounts and their websites and all that stuff. Also check the archives and look up all the other times they've been on the show. They've been on a bunch. And we've had amazing conversations in the past, so definitely check those out. T-shirts are out if you guys want to support the show. They're finally out. You've probably seen them on my social media accounts. So if you want, just throw me a message and let me know your email address and your address, your home address that I'm sending the shirt to, and also what size you want, and I'll send them to you. We have small, medium, large, and extra larges. The way I'm doing it is I'm just sending you a payment request from PayPal, and then basically, that's it. Then you just send me the payment and we're good to go. So hopefully this is an easy way of going about it for a time being. Maybe you'll find a more productive, less time-consuming way in the future. But for now, that's how I'm doing it. So also, we do have a Patreon page. Everybody who's been supporting, we've had a couple new Patreon supporters recently, and I can't thank you guys enough for doing it. I truly, truly appreciate it. I truly feel like every day I'm a little closer to doing this full-time and really putting all my time and effort and focus on this and not a crappy, unfulfilling job that I'm not really a fan of. But with that said, share these conversations, and that's the most important part. Get these things out there as much as possible. If you guys have been listening to the Union of the Unwanted shows, we let all the participants share those conversations because that's what we're trying to do. We're not just trying to network and bring interesting people for interesting conversation. But what's the point of having an interesting conversation and something that could really change perspectives and lives if it's not being heard? And with obviously all the censorship issues and shadow banning and all that stuff, the more people involved in spreading these conversations, the better. So that's what we're trying to do. And everybody who is sharing these podcasts and telling their friends about them and purchasing shirts and wearing those shirts, like, you're all a part of it. You're all a part of spreading this information and starting a ripple. So I can't thank you guys enough for that. Plenty of great shows around the corner that I'm super excited about. The next Union of the Unwanted show will be the 31st at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, live streamed. So follow us, me, Charlie, Midnight Mike, and Sam Tripoli, the four horsemen, the four brothers who started the Union of Unwanted. Follow us to get updates on the live streams and all that stuff and get those links once they're out. And we'll have amazing guests on that show like we've had every show. And you guys have really been enjoying those shows, and we've been really enjoying putting them together. So hopefully that show keeps growing and it keeps helping all of us get to know different researchers and network and expose everybody's work to some new fans. So I've been also getting a lot of people commenting on the music, that people like the theme song and they like the music they hear in the podcast. It's Theory 6. That's my solo music project. It's been neglected a little bit throughout the years because this podcast has taken up so much of my time, but you can get it anywhere you can get digital downloads: iTunes, Google Play, Amazon, anywhere you get digital downloads. The links will be in the show description. The song's called The Ripple Effect by Theory 6, and you can get it anywhere. So support the show that way if you would like. Thanks again. See you on the next one. Peace. We'll get right into this because I know that know, we're probably already running a little late. Everything sounds pretty good. You guys can hear me good?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And I seem to hear you guys pretty good. So I think we're good to go in regards to volume. And yeah, Tim was just with me yesterday on we did a swap cast with somebody you guys are very familiar with. Del Bigtree was with us yesterday.
Oh,
Nice.
yeah.
And you know, today they released Plandemic, right?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
the timing is really timely. So it's queued up on my phone. So when I leave here to go fetch my kid, I'll be putting it on my phone so I can listen.
Yeah, there's actually 2 places you can get it. So for people listening, if you're looking for it, you can get it on the London Real website.
Mhm.
You can get it. What happened to Tim's head?
He went back into his gray.
Did it go away?
Okay, I hope people watch the video because that will make much more sense why we're laughing. But yeah, you can watch it on London Real TV, and then also Ben Swann, who was recently on my podcast, and he was talking about how he has a new platform that he started to hopefully have a place where people can put uncensored material and whatnot. He also is releasing it on. It's called ise.media. And that's his platform. So it's cool to be able to have just options because obviously everybody knows what happened last time a controversial documentary came out. You know, it just completely. I mean, it was amazing just the effort they put in to make sure nobody saw that. And I think that's one of the biggest issues. It's like, why can't people just see the information? And I've said this over and over again on my show, how frustrating it is that they let you watch the documentary as long as it was a video on YouTube of somebody saying they're debunking it. Like, it wasn't so dangerous to watch that, you know, you could show it. Like, it was completely okay to show it as long as you were planting that little seed of doubt or debunking it or saying that this was inaccurate or that was inaccurate. But to put something out there and let people do their own research and make up their own mind, that's what was dangerous. And that's one of my biggest problems with it. It's like, why can't people just get all the information and come up with their own conclusion? And, you know, Tim and I talked a little bit about this yesterday on yesterday's show. You know, it's just like, I'm not trying to push anybody in any direction. I want people to be open-minded and question everything. But you can only do that if you get all the information. If you're suppressing the information and you're force-feeding them only one perspective, how are people going to have informed opinions on anything? So, you know, that's have you guys, everybody on the call see the first one, the first Plandemic documentary? Mm-hmm. Good. There was actually, I'm hoping to get Judy on the show because I finally got a hold of her and I'm hoping to have her on. I know there's some people have like some criticisms of little things, but it's amazing how the media can be wrong about stuff all the time and it's completely okay. They don't get censored. They don't get flagged on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. And yet, like, if somebody like us says anything that's a little bit off, people will be like, oh, they're not credible. They were wrong about this, wrong about that. So it's a huge issue. Does anybody want to start off by giving their opinion on what's going on right now? What's going on in the world? I know the Russian vaccine was something that we briefly talked about yesterday, and them pushing that. And but now the mask thing has become like super political, where it's just like if you don't wear one, it's people just assume it's because you're a Trump supporter. If you do wear one, it's because you're a Biden supporter. It's like, no, how about if just things just don't make logical sense to why you're wearing it, you know? I just got frustrated because I got an email today by I was excited that my son's starting soccer soon, but I was not excited that we asked if they have to wear masks and have to wear masks at soccer. Like, that's ridiculous. I'm like,
While they're playing soccer?
I guess so, yeah. That can't be healthy. I mean, you're breathing in your own, you know, you're supposed to, you know, breathe in oxygen, not the stuff that you're breathing out. You know, it's do you guys want to jump in on that? Like, well, what's your opinion on, let's get everybody's opinions on masks because it's not a controversial topic. And I'm kidding.
Well, it's kind of like cow's milk. What's cow's milk for in nature?
Baby cows.
A baby cow. So why do humans drink it? Why are we the only species that drinks from the breast of another species? And why a cow? How come not a lion or a giraffe?
Or a camel. Or a seal. Yeah.
Right. So it's just when somebody explained that to me, I'm like, oh, because I was like hooked line and sinker drinking cows. You know, I wanted strong bones. Like I'm drinking my milk. You know, I never thought twice of it. Masks are not also. If you need one, you'd be born with one.
Yeah.
It's in the story.
I want to touch upon the milk for a second, because I'm a functional medicine practitioner. And when I see special needs kids, we run peptide testing. And the casein and the gluten is what we check for. And they're through the roof on the most affected children. Mm-hmm. And so the parents feel so guilty if I suggest that they should drink unsweetened coconut or unsweetened almond milk or unsweetened cashew milk. I used to make homemade hazelnut milk for my son, everything organic. And society has been brainwashed about the cow milk, and it does not make your bones strong on top of it. But the only section you will find information about neuropeptides is in the oncology department of a hospital, where you're looking at brain cancer. So they're not really, like, neuropeptides are not a common thing. And when I try to educate the families, this is all new to them. But when we do take the kids off of that, the ones that cannot break it down, it's like lifting a veil over their face, and now they are responding. There's other issues that had triggered toxicity and harm to their body. But the milk is really like hits a nerve for me. And as far as the mask, I mean, I have Governor Cuomo. So I'm in between New York and Connecticut. And honestly, if you don't wear a mask, people will say something or sneer at you, or like, you don't have respect for my health because you're not wearing it. I see some people wearing 2 masks. And my son is a marathon runner, and he said that they are having a 5K in Prospect Park in Brooklyn, but all runners must wear a mask. And as a runner, it is extremely hard to do that. Now, that's with a 5K. He said there's no way a runner could do that for a half marathon or marathon. They will just fall over. It's really you're putting a lot of pressure on the lungs. The whole thing is wrong. No one's talking about living a healthy lifestyle and looking at factors like food and stress and supplementation. They're just looking at vaccines or whatever.
If you talk about that stuff, you get censored. People are getting censored for talking about vitamin D and vitamin C, and like, it's crazy.
Ricky, did you know, like, you had you posted something? I have a private Facebook group, the Total Wellness Empowerment, and you posted something and I loved it. The next day, I was taken down. I got an email from Facebook that said, you are promoting false information. An independent contractor, independent researcher found this. And I was like, oh my God. And that is a private Facebook group. Nothing's private.
That's wild. Well, nothing is private. I mean, there's people who were uploading and downloading Plandemic documentary on a Google Drive, or clouds, and they were disappearing. So what does that tell you? That tells you that even, like, your personal storage isn't personal. That they're getting in everything. So, Kendra, I'm sorry, I interrupted you. I know you wanted to add something.
Well, I wanted to say 2 things. First of all, it is illegal to talk badly about milk in 13 states in this country. And in fact, in states like Ohio and Wisconsin, you can't even test for a dairy allergy via peptides or proteins or anything like that. So at the risk of sounding political, clearly we should always recognize that the government is never, ever about your health. It is a monetizing for-profit agency. So, for that alone, going back to what we had started to talk about with regard to dairy and why we think it's healthy, is because the government created a marketing plan in the 50s when we had a huge amount of dairy, and it was more cost efficient for them to tell dairy farmers to basically spoil and soil their milk than it was to actually put it in a landfill, because it was too toxic to go into a landfill. So that's my point on dairy. And then to your point about people running with masks on, there's already been at least a half a dozen accounts in China, and I think South Korea, might be Thailand, of people running and doing athletic events with masks on. and they have dropped dead. And these are not, people that are at high cardiovascular risk or people that had, horrible medical conditions. These are people that were healthy and athletic that were running with a mask on. It's dangerous and unsafe. So.
Yeah, and there's and even the research. I mean, this is the first time in America that everybody's been wearing a mask. So even if you did research, I mean, what type of research are you doing? We don't have like a huge sample size, because unless you're talking about people in the medical field. But even I think Kendra, you shared this, and I've seen a lot of people share it. Like, it says right on the box, it doesn't prevent the spread of coronavirus. Like, why is there a debate about this? And the crazy thing is when people get so worked up, and I'm like, I think a little bit is the fact that it shows the power of planting the seed of doubt. It's like, even if you just scared, there's so many people that just throw their hands up. They're like, I don't know what to believe anymore. And so I'm just going to do it to stay on the safe side. So it's like, even if you could prove it wrong, they've done such a good job of scaring people, and just people are just so confused that they're just going along just because, there's a small chance. But the thing is, they keep moving the goalposts. And that's the thing that keeps bothering me, is that remember 4 or 5 months ago, it was about flattening the curve. That's old news now. It has nothing to do with death counts. Even though there's issues with the tests, they're not accurate. They're giving false positives. The CDC guidelines for death certificates. Tim James just did a awesome podcast with Senator and Dr. Scott Jensen, who, he was a huge fan of his, because he was willing to go on Fox News and talk about this and talk about how, that they're giving you all this leniency to be able to put down a COVID death and whatnot. And in a way, I almost feel bad for hospitals, because they were losing a lot of business, because there was supposed to be this uproar of patients coming in that never came in. So you had all these people standing around, so they started laying people off. So it's like, wait, we can get some government funding if we put COVID on this death certificate. Why not? And it's like, they did have the incentive to do so. So it's not it's obvious that all the things that we're supposed to believe, they've been wrong about everything. Why trust them in regards to anything? Why are people still believing him? When Fauci says something about the mask, and people are like, well, he only said that because they didn't want all the masks to sell out. I'm like, so with a straight face on TV, which he knew people were listening to, hanging on every word he said, he had no problem lying to the public. So how do you know he's not doing it now? Regardless of what his intentions were, we obviously exposed the fact that he has no problem lying to the public. So it's like, why are you picking and choosing when you believe him and when you don't believe him? Dr. Birx, during press conferences, said we're being very liberal with our COVID deaths. We're counting things with the virus, and by the virus is the same thing. So I'm like, it's crazy how out in the open this stuff is, and yet there's still people wearing masks saying, like you said, turning on each other, getting mad at you if you don't follow those stupid arrows at the grocery store, getting mad at you if you're going for a walk and you don't stray away from them and you walk too close to them. You're turning the public on each other. We literally are turning into the communist countries and the dictatorships that, we supposedly are supposed to be so different from.
You're absolutely right. The predictive programming, it has been quite effective. The government has been very successful at dumbing down now 2 generations. And you are absolutely positively right. From the beginning, when Fauci was like, don't go on a cruise, those cruise ships are hotbeds. I felt like saying, oh, I'll book a cruise right now. I'm going to do exactly the opposite of what that guy and the rest of the government is going to tell us. And then they shut down the cruise industry. The cruise industry has been shut down since April. So I don't know what it is about, it's very easy to control people with fear. And then when you raise their cortisol levels, you shut off their neocortex. So they are nothing more than walking zombies. With no disrespect to our human race, but that's really what we've done here. Now we get people real used to lower levels of oxygenation. We're putting our kids in little plastic boxes in school. They walk up one side of the hallway and down the other. They eat lunch in their little box. So all those arguments that, everybody always had against homeschooling was, you need to send your kids to public school for socialization. There is zero socialization that will be going on in public school in the fall. None. And it's to your point about the masks and the research. I just spent the last 3 weeks dissecting all of the research on the CDC's website and what they are using as this magical gold standard for masks. There isn't one study that they have posted that is an empiric masks prevent the spread of COVID. Not one. There isn't one study that shows that it's even effective for anyone in the general public. There's a couple that show that the N95 with a surgical mask over the top is effective in treating COVID patients if you have direct patient care. But in general, your risk and your chance of getting COVID, the original strain, because we know it's mutated at least 8 times that we're aware of at this point, is next to nothing. So, I mean, people need to shut off the news and go outside. It's really, really scary. And to your point, in Connecticut, our lovely governor, who, we just call him copy and paste Cuomo, has just extended our mask mandate 6 months. So we go to March, which will give us a full year.
Wow. So that's bad.
Yeah. And we're paused in our phase 2. So all of our restaurants, the town I live in is losing 4 out of 10 restaurants. We're stuck at 50%. We're doing all this takeout. The quality of food is substantially less. And people are listing their houses and moving out of town hand over fist. Nobody's sending their kids back to public school. I mean, we're really headed for a very, very deep depression here in the Northeast. And I think our governor's just waiting for the state to go broke so that the federal government will bail them out.
That guy, Cuomo, should be indicted for murder.
Yeah.
I mean, when you take, 35 or 3,700 people that were COVID positive and drop them into nursing homes and then start blaming it on the nursing home people, that's ridiculous. Yeah. And then it's back to speaking about Fauci. Like, I liked what on our Swapcast we did yesterday, Ricky, that John Rice said, which was, he goes, hey, look, Fauci has been in bed with Bill Gates for a long time. They're close. They're really close. But Gates has been in bed and really close with Jeffrey Epstein, who's a known and convicted pedophile. End of story. And then he cites the New York Times article that I think linked Fauci and Gates together. And it's like, just drop that information and let people go do their own homework. Why would you take information from somebody that's friends with a known pedophile? And
I think people are brainwashed, and I do think there's several things. I think that, they got all celebrities and these superstar athletes involved to spread the word, and they planned this out, right? Back in 2017, there was that conference where they said, okay, who has to be the one, the WHO organization, and then we'll get who do people look up to? Well, they look up to these certain people, so we have to get them on board. And they did spread fear. The people that I saw that were tested positive, now we're in New York, we're in the epicenter of the nightmare, and I have people testing positive, and it's going through the families. And I've had several family members were throwing up from anxiety on the phone with me, 11 o'clock at night. Am I going to die? Is my kid going to die? Crying like hysterical. And I'm like, okay, let's keep calm. These are the remedies. And I would personalize the remedies for each one of them. And we've done functional medicine testing before, so I know where their deficiencies were. And they all came through. But it was also the mindset. We had to really conquer the fear that, I said, stop going online and stop listening to the news. And it's the ones that delayed any type of treatment were the ones that did not make it in the hospitals. Because, again, we know people that work in New York City hospitals. And then the Queens Hospital was a problem. But the treatment that they performed on these individuals was the wrong one many times. So they actually caused the issues. Then we had the whole nursing home issue, which I don't understand, because outside of Westchester County Center, they set up stations and they were never used. Spent millions and millions of dollars. Everything was set up. Not one person went in there. And what about the Navy ship? How many people went there? So they really handled it wrong. I think they increased the deaths, and the doctors who spoke about it, like the ER doctors, and said, this is wrong, we need to do this, they got in trouble. So it's a problem all over. There was a big scheme, there was a big plan, and I'm hoping that there's going to be more people that realize the truth. So like I knew several elderly people that said, oh, once the vaccine comes out, I'm going to take it. And now when I speak to them, they say, yeah, I don't think so. Especially when Fauci says, well, someone asked him if he would take the vaccine. And he says, well, after a double-blinded test, and there are 300,000 people in that test, and it proves that it's safe and effective, then for ethical purposes, I'll let everybody else go before me, and then I'll get it. So I think people, if they really start to do their research, but how many people do? People want the answer given to them.
I think something that's really important to point out here is that the doctors and nurses, when this whole thing first happened, were kind of in the dark. So it wasn't like they were doing the bad things on purpose. They were kind of following standard of care. People were coming in with high anxiety, and they were putting them on, muscle relaxers and, all these drips and sedating them basically, and then intubating them, which we know now with COVID basically blows up your lungs in 88% of the cases. So we know that doesn't work. But then there was nurses that were coming up that were brought in that hey, we're doing hydroxychloroquine and zinc, and people are getting well one after another, 100% cure rate. Well, we can't do that because there's no clinical studies, double-blind, placebos, none of that stuff. But what you are doing is killing people. So why do we keep doing that? Well, we don't have the studies. Well, those studies take 7 to 15 years and $5 billion. We don't have time to wait for that. But it's just, the whole thing is just like the standard of care model has got the doctors in so much fear that they are literally paralyzed. They can't do anything. They're literally handcuffed by standard of care. They have to do what they're told to do. Otherwise, they risk losing their job and 12 years of schooling and mortgage payments and probably a huge student loan they got to pay off. And then some of them that are down the road 20 or 30 years are so brainwashed that they're just blinded and they don't see it. Well, but I did want to get some of those doctors and nurses off the hook. Is what I'm
That was nice of you.
But doctors are employees of the government. So if you think of them as employees of the government, we have lost the art and science of nursing and of medicine. It's gone. We are all protocol based. It is all based off of, statistics, flawed statistics and skewed statistics. So, I mean, a bigger problem is not, the inactivity or ineptitude or in education of our current doctors and nurses. It's the system itself. And the fact that, people like Rockefeller and Carnegie and Mellon back in the 50s and 60s seeded the entire medical community for a sick model. And so to your point, Tim, we're based off of a sick model. It was more advantageous and beneficial for these hospitals to collect $39,000 per death than it was to name or identify anything else that happened in those hospitals during that initial phase of the emergency.
I would also say, like, some of the stories that said, oh, this person died from this. Like, there was a young a boy. He died from this. He didn't have any pre-existing conditions, but he was about 50 pounds overweight in due respect. And that is a condition. And then if you had anemia, if you had anything with your blood, it really attacked you. So something that you would not think was such a big condition was. And they're not also bringing that to light. And I think that's a problem.
Well,
and it's kind of like a heart attack too, right? Because you can go into the doctor, you can get checked. Hey, you're good to go. Thumbs up. Your cholesterol's at 170 or whatever. It looks good. And then 2 days later, you dropped dead of a heart attack, but you just got checked and everything was fine. So people don't realize that there's straws building up in the camel's back when you have a poor lifestyle, chemical toxicity, lack of nutrition, lack of hydration, all these things, lack of movement. And then eventually the camel's back is going to break. And what happened is maybe like that little boy, he's 40 pounds overweight. Think about that. A full-grown adult man, 40 pounds overweight is a lot. I was that guy. Imagine dumping 40 pounds on a child. Okay, that is a pre-existing condition. That kid was susceptible to everything else. All factors of disease went astronomically up for that kid.
And to that point, the Pentagon study that came out in early 2020 stated that anybody that got a flu shot had something like a 40% chance of having a much higher risk of adverse outcomes from COVID. Largely because the immune system is primed for COVID, which means that it doesn't identify it, it more like accentuates it if the body's actually exposed to it. So again, with all these people that had no pre-existing conditions, and I'll tell you, I combed through most of the M&M in Connecticut. The average age of death was about 84. We were focused in one county in 2 particular nursing homes. And again, to your point, in Connecticut, there were several cases of people in their 40s and 50s. Everyone I saw was morbidly obese, not 40 pounds, way north of 100 pounds overweight. So, and I could not get the flu shot information. We are still trying to work with our DPH, but we have switched commissioners in this time. So I'll keep you posted on that.
And I would also like to mention that I found this to be pretty interesting. They always, they said that I think there were more men that were affected, and men are lower in glutathione than females. And you want to get your glutathione levels tested and your vitamin C, because vitamin C is a precursor to glutathione. You need NAC as well. You need all those things working. Glutathione protects the lungs. On top of it, liquor stores were essential, but when you drink any type of alcohol, it lowers your glutathione levels. So if it's low to begin with and you're having a few drinks, you can making yourself more vulnerable. So this information, like,
well, that doesn't make sense, Nancy, because guys don't drink. It's just women that are drinking.
Exactly.
I'll agree with you.
So you have to look at those markers as well, the glutathione, the vitamin C, the N-acetylcysteine. How, what are your levels? If you're low in them and then you're not taking supplementation, or you're not eating the foods that could boost them, and you're not living a healthy lifestyle, and you're stressed or not moving, all of these things is the perfect storm for what has happened and for future issues.
Well, I think a lot of times people think like, oh, that guy seems so healthy, and all of a sudden he just dropped dead. And it's like, no, that's not what happens. Like, you go from like healthy and then here sick, and slowly your lifestyle or lack of and bad nutrition gets you closer and closer to sick. It's not like I tell people all the time, like, anybody who just, I mean, don't get me wrong, there's probably some freak accidents out there, but in a lot of cases where they seem like freak accidents, I'm like, well, we don't know their lifestyle. You don't know how they eat. They don't know what type of work environment they live in or they work in. I mean, what if you're, today we're putting blacktop down. I mean, we don't do it all the time, but I those guys who literally pave every day, just breathing in those chemicals every day. I mean, I get headaches just from being around it, all day. I mean, to do that, and your nose will stop giving you the signal that this is, you don't even smell it after a while, but it's, so you don't know. There's so many other factors from that can lead to somebody being unhealthy and having issues, even in the long run, right? Like, somebody gets older and they say, oh my God, I have this just random issue, and it's like, well, did you have years of eating McDonald's and not exercising or being in a toxic environment? Who knows? But I just don't think that it's as simple as like somebody just has bad luck. I think there's so many little life decisions that can help. Like, it's either helping you or hurting you. A lot of times what you're eating, right? It's either helping you or hurting you. And so I think a lot of people just like to think that, like, hey, I just eat poorly today, not a big deal, I just do. But all these things will add up and could add up to a future issue.
100%.
Yeah. So hopefully this whole COVID thing is going to just do one thing, and that's wake people up that we need to boost our immune system. That's where that's where it should be 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I follow the news station, instead of having a death counter, have you boosted your the amount of people that are boosting their immune system. I made the USA immune system boosting challenge, right? Who's going to join this? That's where it needs to be. And what do you need to do? Well, you need to drink a lot of purified water, and you need to get outside and get sunshine, and you need to have fun. All we have to do is look at the Centurions, right? You guys probably studied the blue zones, and the top three things are they hang lifelong friends. So you have to be around people that you love. We're pack animals. Number two, they exercise daily. Just move the body. And exercise doesn't mean you have to go to the gym and kill yourself in the weights for 2.5 hours, even though you can't even get in there now without a mask probably. And then number three, just movement. I tell people just walking or just bouncing, just get on the ground and roll around. Number three would be eating 80% plant-based or greater. So adding more plants to your lifestyle. Those three things are the magical combination right there for Centurions all around the world. So why don't we just focus on this kind of stuff? And then,
well, because it's being suppressed. That's the problem. The problem is something as harmless as what you just said was considered misinformation, disinformation, dangerous information, whatever they want to call it, and it was being flagged. I mean, Joe Rogan, during one of his podcasts, he was actually getting upset that YouTube was taking down videos of people suggesting things. Like, we understand, like, if you eat better, if you eat good, nutritionally dense foods, you feel better. But God forbid you take one of those vitamins or minerals that's in that food and just say, hey, take an extract of this or take this alone. All of a sudden, oh no, vitamins don't work. That's dangerous. You can't be giving health advice. I mean, it's gotten to the point where like people are afraid of giving health advice because you get in trouble. It's like, it's crazy. And that's considered dangerous information. There's legitimately people saying, hey, like, do this, do that, because they don't want people healthy. It's just like, Dr. Kendra Becker talked about, like, there's way more money in giving prescription drugs to sick and healthy people, like let's just get everybody on pills that will make them even more sick, and then we can just give them other pills for that, for those side effects. The hydroxychloroquine, like we talked about yesterday, like it wasn't a Republican Democrat issue. It wasn't a Trump Biden issue. It was a big pharma issue. It was big pharma saying, we want to put you on an expensive drug, so God forbid there's an alternative treatment, because if there is an alternative treatment, then we can't fast track this vaccine. And that's what was causing all of it, because if there was another treatment, hydroxychloroquine actually worked. And there's tons of, could you find somebody who had an allergic reaction to it or some type of harmful reaction? Yeah, you could find a case in just about any drug on the market that somebody who's had some. That's why when you see these commercials, there's this huge list of side effects, because they're just covering their bases. Like, hey, we want to make sure if you get one of these million side effects, at least you know that we told you so. We told you you could possibly have all these things. So it's like this idea that it became such a political thing, and that's the problem with like all these statements. It's like, if we say, hey, it's about your immune system, it's not about the virus. When they say you're asymptomatic, in many cases what we're really saying is you're healthy and your immune system's strong enough to fight the virus. It's like, oh, you must be a Trump supporter. It's like why is everything, like, they've done such a great job of divide and conquer, of just getting everybody fighting among themselves, and that nobody's looking at things logically anymore. It's not even about health anymore, or about fighting big pharma or corporations being greedy and governments being greedy. It's everything's political, and it makes it so hard to have these type of discussions we're having, because somebody will just immediately label you as, oh, you must be a Trump supporter, or you must be this. It's like, no, man, I'm just looking at things logically. Like, not everything has to be political.
Yeah, Ricky, I'd like to clear up supplementation for people so that they have an idea of what to do. Like, so 5 years ago as a health coach, reading lots of labels, calling companies, finding out what the ingredients are, picking the winners, and then sharing them, and then 6 months later seeing a new ingredient on a label that I didn't even know what it was, like xanthan gum, and I looked it up and it's like mutated corn syrup fermented in bacteria used as an emulsifier, because people don't like to shake a drink twice because it might settle, and heaven forbid an American's got to shake their drink twice. So I'm like, I got frustrated. I started a supplement company. So when somebody says vitamins don't work, they can be true, because first off, you have to understand that the people behind the scenes are always playing both sides. There's a whole bunch of them that are Republicans. There's a whole bunch that are Democrats. There's people that are pro-vaccine that are big pharma, and there's people that are anti-vaccine that are big pharma that make a big show, but nothing ever gets done. And it's the same thing in the supplement industry. Well, first off, 85% of the supplements on the market are owned by pharmaceutical companies. So they're putting out synthetic nutrients. So that's going to lower your immune system. And what they do is they use a process called micronization to make the molecules very, very small, because cells are very dehydrated, so they don't absorb nutrients very well. The lipid membrane or fat membrane around the cell is it's messed up, and you just can't get nutrients into the cell. So this micronization process, they can literally rape the cell, shove these synthetic vitamins into your cell, and you get an effect. And you think something's working. And this is the typical drug approach. So what ends up happening is you might feel something, but down the road you need more of it, kind of like in the painkillers, and then you got to switch and do something else, right? So you think it's working, and you stay on it because you remembered it worked 8 months ago or 6 years ago. I mean, people are literally on supplements that I talked to them about for 3-4 years. They remembered it worked, but then it doesn't work anymore. So, but that said, 92% of the supplements in the market are synthetic and chemical. So you got about 8% left that are whole food or food-based, and that's what you really want. Whole food, whole herbs, naturally occurring in nature, no synthetics. But the problem with a batch of those is that they also have these other ingredients. So not only do you have to read the ingredients, you have to look down below and see the other ingredients. These are typically binders, fillers, and flow agents they use, because when you use a synthetic, they don't fill up a capsule very well. But Americans are not going to buy empty capsules with just a little bit of synthetics floating around, so they want it full. So you fill it up with a filler. That would be something like magnesium stearate as an example. That could come from diseased cowhides or GMO corn or soy as an example, okay? And then silicon dioxide, a level 3 toxin on the EPA's toxin list, yet it's in most supplements. Guys, check your supplement labels, or dicalcium phosphate. So those things are in there as fillers and flow agents so that they're encapsulation machines that the manufacturing plants don't get caked up, and it's for speed and for money. It's not about your health. So what you're looking for is companies that have a whole food source with no synthetics, not only in the ingredients, but the other ingredients. And as a perfect example, vitamin C, if you look at pull out your multivitamin, you're listening to this, you'll see behind there, it'll say absorbic acid. Okay, that is a synthetic chemical. You're ingesting a synthetic chemical that's made out of crude oil. What you want it to say is from the amla berry, or from the arceola cherry, or from the camu camu berry as an example. Now you've got a whole food source, and please check the other ingredients label. So, end of story, supplements are good if they're whole food and naturally occurring, and the other ingredients aren't jacked up too. Just stay away from the ones that are synthetic, and you'll be good to go.
Yeah, well, I think there's a different qualities of supplements. There's different qualities of food, right? I mean, sometimes you see these studies where they try to convince you that meat is causing all these illnesses. It's like, well, they're eating McDonald's. They're eating, they're not eating grass-fed meat. They're not eating, so it's like there's so many other things that are into play. So a lot of times, like you said, like somebody might be like, oh, I read that this vitamin is useful. Let me go to CVS and go grab some. I'm like, well, you're not getting a good quality vitamin there. So it's like, do you know anything about the brand? Sometimes you're buying CVS brand, which who knows where the hell that comes from. So it's like there is different qualities of stuff. So I think what you're saying is really important. People have to realize, like, you can't just not look at a label and be like, oh, I'm buying vitamin D or vitamin C or or whatnot. There's different qualities, which means you're gonna absorb it differently, where it's coming from, the source of it and all that stuff. So yeah, that's all super important.
It's very important. I always tell people to call the company and ask them, because I'm so sick and tired of telling people that vitamin C is from corn, even though it says does not contain corn, because then they remove the corn protein. So I'd be like, just call the company and ask them where they derive it from. And they were so surprised. Most of it was coming from China, and it was from genetically modified corn. And talking about food as well, I mean, wherever you can, you really do want to go organic. You want to remove not only just non-GMO, but it's also going to be sprayed with the glyphosate. And that actually gets rid of all your beneficial bacteria, which then can affect your immune system and your serotonin levels. So, healing the gut and focusing on the gut and what you fuel your body with is so important. So I don't know what type of car a person has, but what type of gas are you putting in? Does it make a difference? For some cars, it does. You have to realize that the core of your health is your, stomach. People get that for the abs and they want the tight tone stomach. Well, we need to do that internally, because that's going to affect your mood, your health, your immune system, everything.
Absolutely right. I started my supplement company for the exact same reasons you did, Tim. My favorite companies and my favorite supplements were perfect, and 6 months later they would be new and improved with some poison crap in there. Mm-hmm. And I think sourcing is very, very important. Food is very, very important. And also too, something that has come up a lot because of the fear that they're really marketing, through the mainstream media and just in general public, is, your relationship with your higher power, your relationship with fear, and your ability to control these emotions and really understand that we're dealing with a very dynamic, organism here. And if you live every day, like you said, Nancy, about your patients that were vomiting in fear of, worrying about catching COVID and dying. I mean, that kind of thinking can absolutely raise cortisol levels, which then jacks up blood sugar levels, which certainly damages your immune system. And so, you have to take a really multifaceted approach, and people really need to spend a good amount of time in each of these areas in order for a really balanced experience. And then when you live without fear, it is so freeing, and whatever that is for you, it is just a completely freeing experience. And that's what we really should be marketing. But again, the government isn't about health. If they did, they would have airdropped a bunch of vitamin C all over us. They would have told us to stay home and go for hikes and love our family, not, peek out the window at our neighbor and call the rat line if they were in their yard getting their garbage cans without a mask on. So, you have to understand the big organization that is kind of, that can disempower humans, particularly in America and the country.
But that also brings up being mindful. And I believe that many people cannot be mindful, are not mindful. And that's why they have to always be on the go. They can't just sit and be with themselves. And there was a lot of like mental health issues that came up, and lots of marriages and abuse of children and spouses or significant others. So I love the fact that you bring this up. I mean, we need to be mindful. We need to really go internally and find out, I always say, find out your purpose and be passionate about life. And every decision has a consequence. So, in all areas of your life. And, I wrote a book that's called Total Wellness of Mind and Body, because I'm like, the two go together. You can't take one without the other. They're going to follow each other. And it goes into like the ripple effect into all areas of your life. And I think that would be great to start that in even elementary school, to get kids not only learning about finances and responsibility and resilience, but also being mindful in every decision and to honor their choices in life and who they stay with and what they put in their body and what they put on their body. Mm-hmm. That's a long way, man. I hope that happens in my lifetime. I don't know.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, in public school, it would require a huge kind of upending and restarting, because we've done, especially this year, the exact opposite of that. Children are now being taught and indoctrinated to fear each other. There is no sense of community. There's only this sense of self-preservation with really no benefit even for self. We're making all of these sacrifices, right, by not going to concerts and not going to church and wearing all these masks, but it's not benefiting us. We still have, COVID cases, according to the news, out the wazoo. We're still under, emergency orders. We're still having supplies restricted here in the Northeast. I mean, things are still, we're not getting any benefit for any of these sacrifices. So you're absolutely right. The lessons have to really be reoriented for children.
Yeah, the school thing, but this is where, when I was talking to Ben Swann, he talked about how he feels like they overplayed their hand. And I think a lot of topics that were fringe or people weren't really on board with, like with questioning vaccines or Bill Gates being a eugenicist and all that stuff, and his link to his Gavi, the Vaccine Alliance, and his link with the WHO, and all this stuff. Like, it all seemed like conspiracy theorists, like just conversations, and all of a sudden, like, the most skeptical people are very open to these topics and very open to these discussions, even homeschooling. I mean, something that, like you said, for a long time, it was like, oh, who homeschools their kid? I don't want to raise some antisocial, weird kid who doesn't know how to make friends. But now you're seeing, but the other thing too is like, there's some good that's coming out of this, right? You're getting people who are questioning vaccine safety. You are getting people who are gathering, like moms, like my wife, she, I was telling her, I'm like, listen, if our kids have to wear masks, they're not going to school. I'm like, our kids aren't going to school. I don't care what happens, they're not going to school. And so once they announced that, they have to wear masks at school, I'm like, even if your kid wants to go back to school, if you have a conversation with him, remember, his last memory of school is not what he's walking into. Like, you see some of these pictures of these kids at lunch, like, separate from each other, or like that one picture that was going around, I don't know if it's real or not, but where the kids were in like a box, some plexiglass box. Like, this is prison. This isn't school. Like, you hear stories of like kids getting hurt and like the teacher can't even grab them and comfort them because you can't touch each other. Like, this is ridiculous. And there's a lot of businesses, and any business that is saying, we went to a restaurant this past weekend where there was no sign to say you had to wear a mask. And my wife's like, oh, I don't want to get. I'm like, listen, don't worry about it. Well, just don't wear the mask. I'm like, because I'm not going to wear mine, so I'm going to embarrass us anyway. So you might as well not wear yours. So we walk in, and the business, nobody who works there is wearing a mask. Nobody who's there eating is wearing one. And we asked them, and they're like, no. Like our waitress, her father owns a restaurant, and she's like, my dad says, hey, you want to wear it? Great. If you don't, That's fine too. And I'm like, that's exactly how everywhere should be. I'm like, it should be just a personal choice, especially when the science isn't settled. This idea of like, we figured out, well, it helps a little bit. According to who? Like when people say, well, it helps, like according to who? Like I go to the gym and they opened it up, and luckily my gym's pretty lenient with like keeping your mask on. Because the second I walk in, I just take it off and put it in my pocket. Because honestly, I'm more concerned about them getting in trouble with the health department. Because that's the other thing. Like, even if these businesses want to do what's right, in my opinion, which is like let people have the personal choice, they're scared they're going to get shut down. And a lot of these businesses are just barely hanging on. You know, there's rumors that like in Massachusetts, you know, Charlie Baker, who's horrendous, wants to backtrack and go back to like stage 2. And I'm like, based on what? Like, so cases are going up. The cases that are going up in a lot of times it's because people are just getting tested more. A lot of times, we have to take in consideration that these tests give false positives. Like, so all this reaction is based on a bunch of statistics and information that we can all agree can't be counted on to be accurate. So it's like, then we have to reconsider everything and be like, listen, why are we doing all this? The long-term effects. I mean, I just shared a meme today, a little meme that had like this graph, and it said, it showed a little sliver of people who died from the coronavirus, and the rest of the graph was red, the rest of the circle. And it's like, these are the people who are fucked by the coronavirus. And it's like, because it's screwing everybody. Like Trump during a press conference said the average age of death is 78. Okay. A 78-year-old person is not going to concerts, so you're restricting concerts, isn't going to playing soccer, isn't opening a business and going to work 60 hours a week to try to help grow their business. Like, so the restrictions are really hurting. It's the schools, for example, another thing. Like, you're hurting children, younger people who are more socially active. They go out more. They do, so it's like, the restrictions are hurting those people, but yet the virus, even if you believe all the nonsense, isn't hurting those people. Like, even if you believe the nonsense, like there's a better chance of a kid getting hit by lightning struck by lightning than they are of dying the coronavirus. The flu has killed more people this year, or more younger people, than the virus, and yet we're ruining kids' lives. We're kids are playing with their tablets more. They're going on. I'm sure a lot of teenagers are spending more time on social media, which is obviously has algorithms and is designed to keep you addicted to it anyway. So now it's like you're only making it easier. And like we start off this podcast talking about, there was nobody on the news. If they actually cared about you, if they actually cared about the health of the society, why wasn't there doctors, after nutritionists and personal trainers on these news stations talking about how do you exercise at home with the gyms closed? How do you eat well when you're afraid of going to the grocery store and you're eating takeout? Like, all these things that will actually help with people's health and immune systems, so when they do get sick, they can actually fight back. And there's none of that. So the agenda just becomes so clear that it's not about our health. It's not about any of that. It's about pushing the big pharma agenda and all the other agendas that are being pushed right now. So it's yeah.
And controlling. I mean, it is also, they could see how they can control us. And this reminds me of the Avengers. I don't know which one it was, but when the Avengers were all good and they were superheroes and they were supposed to take care of the world, and then one guy got the Avengers to fight against each other. And it was unheard of, but they fought against each other and they almost killed each other. And I said it to my sons the other day. I was like, this reminds me of that movie, The Avengers, that one movie where they had Captain America fight with that other guy. And
oh, yeah, I remember that one.
Almost destroyed each other. I said, this is playing out. You have people who will rat on each other. There's a town in Westchester County where the store owners left it up to the consumers to wear a mask or not. Well, there's a Facebook group, and they all wrote down the stores that were doing that, and they called the police on them. And now everybody has to wear a mask. Then they went as far as getting in touch with the governor, so that's all you need to hear. Don't make me come down there. And now everybody's on the sidewalk wearing masks in every store. The restaurant, you must wear the mask and then take it off when your food comes and put it back on. So, at that point, why even go? But this is what it's turned. They really psychologically turned people against each other and did make it political. It has nothing to do with our health or the betterment of humanity. And it's very sad. People can't see it. It's really sad.
You're absolutely right. These days, the average American doesn't even know who the enemy is. You know what I mean? They don't even know who the enemy is. They're fighting with their neighbors. They're fighting with their school systems. They're fighting with their shopkeepers. We don't even have a common enemy because there's been so much fear and so much predictive programming that has just been stoked with these little caveats and catchphrases. What is it? We're alone together and we'll get through this together and all that other crap that's going on now. Like every time I hear that, it like makes my skin crawl. And that's largely because you're exactly right, in my opinion, is that this is just a huge test for compliance going forward for the chips, for, personally, I don't believe there will be a coronavirus vaccine. Coronavirus has been around since the beginning of time. They've never been able to isolate it. That doesn't mean that they won't come out with some sort of a jab that has nanoparticles in it or a microchip or whatever, because vaccine manufacturers are exempted from all liability. They're really not doing any studies on any of this. That they have the coronavirus here in the U.S. in a phase 3 clinical trial, but I think it only includes 30,000 people, which is only 1% of our general population. So I don't even think it meets the criteria to be able to be advanced past that. So what happened with Ebola, for those of you who don't remember, is we went through the whole thing. We got all the way to phase 3, and then the Ebola outbreak kind of died down. So they really didn't have a whole lot of study participants to be able to test the vaccine on. So what they were able to do is shelve the vaccine at that point. And then if there was ever another outbreak, they could basically restart where they left off instead of restarting back at square one. I suspect that's what's going to happen just based on the timeline. And I really think that they're going to try to push this through, to the election and probably a little bit after. And then I don't know that there will ever be a coronavirus vaccine that will come to pass. That's just my opinion on it.
I hope you're right.
And even some of the pro-vaccine people like Dr. Fauci and Dr. Hotez, even they are saying like, hey, we should, there is the potential this vaccine could not work or whatever. And it's like, they're already setting you up. It's like, so why even force it upon us? By the time we make it, or somebody makes it, the virus could already change. It could be completely useless. I mean, obviously that's why people get the flu vaccine every year. Whoever's dumb enough to do that, they do it because the virus changes. So by the time they actually get this vaccine made, who knows if there's even a need for it. But like you said, it's never been so obvious that it's about a election and many other things, because you look at it we can all go to the grocery store, we can do all these things, but yet one of the most important things in America is voting, and yet you can't let people go to the polls. You can't let, which is pretty easy to social distance. I mean, you can kind of control the environment where you can't really control a Walmart or Home Depot or whatever with people walking by each other and whatnot, and everybody touching the same things. So it's quite obvious it's political. The thing that's scary is I've actually had some people say this to me, and I've talked to other people, and they said they've heard the same thing, where people are like, oh, I hate Joe Biden, but I kind of want him to win just so we can end all this. And I'm like, well, they win. If they win, they basically won if you're saying that. Basically they win if you say that. They're getting what they want. They want to just screw things up so bad that it's like, you know what? I'm just so tired of this madness. I just want Joe Biden to win. I'm like, it's not going to get any better if Joe Biden's in there. He'll mandate masks, in a heartbeat, because he's just a puppet. He doesn't have any opinion or care about anything. He'll just wear a mask just so he doesn't have to talk.
Yeah, he already said he would. He already said he would mandate masks for 3 months, and he would bail out all the broke cities and the broke states. So,
yeah. So, could we talk about a solution here? Because I want to share some. You guys familiar with Dr. Shiva Ayyadurai? He's running for Senate in Massachusetts. So, what I like about him is he already has things like acts written, ready to go. He's got legislation written before he's even in office. And there's a little summary of this Health Rights Acts that I think will clear some stuff up. This is a bill proposed by Dr. Shiva Ayyadurai. He's an MIT PhD and a Fulbright scholar, and he's one of the top immune system experts in the world. He says the 1962 Vaccination Assistance Act was based on an old science of the immune system. The 1986 National Childhood Vaccine Act was a band-aid solution to fix the problems of the 1962 Act. Many people had misgivings of the 1986 Act, which indemnified vaccine manufacturers from liability, like you mentioned earlier. Solutions, so you can't sue them. Solutions to address the problems of the 1986 Act have led nowhere but to a growing division of the pro-vax and anti-vax camps without addressing the real need for optimal immune health, which we were talking about boosting the immune system that can only be personalized. The current pro-vax and anti-vax movements operate on the premise to varying degrees that the state has the right to be involved in the personal decisions of an individual's immune health. For nearly 2 decades, anti-vax misleaders have corralled families and activists seeking health and well-being for the singular activity of negotiating with legislators on the extent to which the state will be involved in the immune health of the individual. Modern science of the immune system demonstrates, number one, the need for precision and personalized medicine. One size does not fit all. Number two, the science of the 1962 Act was best outdated, 60 to 100 years old, and at worst, junk science. And number three, the lack of any risk and safety assessment in vaccine development. This bill is based on modern scientific understanding of the immune system and recognizes and honors not the state, but the healthcare provider-patient relationship sovereignty as the vehicle for determining the optimal solution for an individual's immune health. This bill proposes a real solution for immune health by decentralizing decision-making on matters concerning the immune health of the individual and the sovereignty of the healthcare provider-patient relationship, and eliminating the undue intervention of said sovereignty by the federal government so as to enable the delivery of the modern precision and personalized medical interventions in advancing immune health and resilience. And he's got a whole act written all up on it. And you guys can check him out at Shiva4Senate.com. You can read all those acts.
I like Dr. Shiva, but he was actually supposed to be on my podcast, and then I was a little hesitant because I'm sure at least Dr. Kendra Becker, I know you probably noticed the little feud he had with Kennedy, which I didn't like, and I'm like, what the hell is going on here? We're on the same team, and like, why? And because both of them are pretty respected doctors who are not doctors. Kennedy's attorney, but he's been in the environmental movement for a long time. A really successful environmental attorney, and I'm like, we're both on the same team. Why are you guys turning on each other? And then it made me a little hesitant. Anybody know what happened of that, or what motivation that might have been? Because that seemed a little weird for me.
So you'd have to listen to a lot of Dr. Shiva. He actually goes into detail on this, and he's like calling out everybody, man. I mean, the guy's calling out everybody. What he said was that this is one of the things where there's people that are in position that are pro-vaccine and anti-vaccine, right and left. There's people that they put on a front, but there's nothing ever real happens. If we really want to change the way healthcare is done, we have to repeal the 1986 Act and that 1962 Act, abolish them, and start all over based on the new concept of the immune system. And Kennedy actually said, it's on video, that he has vaccinated his children and he thinks that everybody should be vaccinated. Yet he's anti-vax, and he voted for Hillary Clinton, whose major funders were the pharmaceutical companies. So
when did he say that? Because he got into the vaccine debate kind of kicking and screaming. He was going to a lot of rallies. His focus was environmental stuff, and then he was meeting parents that are saying, hey, you have to look into this. There's chemicals in these vaccines. I think there's people getting injured by them or whatnot. And then little by little, he kind of got pushed into it. I mean, believe me, there's no good publicity in being outspoken about vaccines. I mean, he's a Kennedy. I mean, he easily could have milked that cow till the cows come home. But he easily could have just milked that, used the name and the fame, and in regards to like suing DuPont and all these other things. Like, that's all stuff that's pretty uncontroversial. Like, I just don't see any other motivation than knowing that he's him supporting people like Del Bigtree and Dr. Judy from the Plandemic documentary and so many other people throughout the years. I just, I don't know. I mean, I'm curious if some of this is political, not in regards to Kennedy, but in regards to, because he's running, right? He's running for right now, or he's planning on running, right, Dr. Chiva?
U.S. Senate,
Yeah, so, for Massachusetts, and he will be running against a Kennedy.
Right, maybe that's it. But I mean, I know that Kennedy, someone did ask him, why did we heard a clip that you used to get the flu shot. And Kennedy answered on Instagram, I love his Instagram, he said, I did used to get the flu shot. I had no idea how harmful it was. Then I get educated on it, and I don't believe that there are any safe vaccines. And as like a lawyer, he did his due diligence after the fact. And he does talk about vaccines and autism. I mean, he's known for the water, keeping the water pure, as well as fighting against Monsanto, which he brought the whole glyphosate to light. And now that Monsanto was protected under Obama, they, you know, when they make these arrangements on Congress, they always slip something in, and it went into the Securities Act. And you couldn't go after Monsanto. But when Bayer bought Monsanto, it opened up the door to go after Bayer. So Bayer has put aside $9 billion to pay off all the people who are shown that there's a cancer is formed by the glyphosate. And Kennedy is in charge of all of that. That's his legal team. So with I think that the parents did come up to him and say, you need to look at this. And, you know, someone else could have said, no, I'm busy, right? But somewhere, something personal must have happened to him, a family member, or he saw a child that was injured. And now he does not get the flu shot. I know that his family wrote that letter and put it in the New York Times saying, we love him, but we don't agree with his anti-vaccine approach and everything else. So he is in a controversial area. Maybe it's because, I don't know if it's whatever family member it is running against this person. I have no idea, but he did used to get shots. He does not anymore. That's what he said. Yeah, I think that's about a lot of people. I think you should, I think you find out about, like, you bring, and again, I'm not anti-vaccine. If you can do it in a safe, effective way, I agree with Fauci. If you could be safe and effective and show double-blinded tests, then, hey, he wants to get his shot. So I think every American could agree with Fauci on that. If you prove that it's safe and effective and it's double-blinded, then that's great. But I think that what happens is that people listen to the pediatrician. And when I was growing up, I think I needed it was one booster, because I still have the mark, because we all got measles, we got mumps, we got, several family members got rubella. We all got these diseases. And then now, so you just needed one, right? Now you need so many at such a young age, while the blood-brain barrier is still open. One is vulnerable. The glutathione's not high. Their immune systems are not mature enough. And you're giving one after another so early that you're not letting the child reach a milestone to see if there's any regression. Now it's just a crapshoot, and all these kids, a lot of kids that I see in the neighborhood, they're kind of foggy. And, you wonder what it is. Is it the food? Is it that they're going along the regular schedule? But I think the ones that make the connection is after the fact, the same way supposedly Robert Kennedy Jr. said he did.
I think, Ricky, the best thing to do is just get Dr. Shiva on and ask him the question, then he can go into detail on it, because I could hack through most of what I remember, but I do know that the Kennedys came out after he started challenging them, and then they said that Shiva was he was a drug manufacturer, and that's not the case. His company Cytosolve actually does natural, will test anything, and Dr. Shiva has said, for free, I will take any pharmaceutical company, any drug, I will test it for free and show the effectiveness based on these modeling, these maps that they've put together, and nobody's taking him up on it yet.
Why don't you get both on your show?
That would be freaking awesome.
I could try.
I mean, do it. Come on, reach out.
Pull some strings.
Shiva's asked to debate or discuss with Bobby Kennedy on several occasions, and Bobby's never taken him up on it either.
And neither did Fauci.
And neither did Fauci. But the fake Fauci guy, I liked him.
That was hilarious.
That was so funny.
Yeah, it's to me, it's because, I mean, obviously Del Bigtree has been a huge face to the movement. And I love Del. I mean, he goes out there, he fights, he'll talk to anybody, he'll go on everybody's show and really help provoke thought. And so to me, it's like we're all on the same team. Even if we disagree on certain things, like I hope that there's not some other darker agenda going on, because I mean, honestly, we're all kind of fighting for the same thing. And let's be honest, like, we need all the people we can have, because for a long time it was a fringe topic. I mean, people were so passionate about the vaccine topic, and to me it was like one of the most important ones, because it's one that literally affects you, your children. And I mean, if you go as far as like mandating vaccines for your child to do just about anything, like, parents are put in shitty situations. And then you get the pediatricians that, like, you know, I've been kicked out of my pediatrician's office. I mean, I had to go to another pediatrician because they didn't, and I was polite about it. I mean, I'm just like, hey, we're going to wait. That was always like code word, right? We're just going to wait, wink, wink. You know, my kid's 5. Yeah, we're still waiting, you know, but it was just one of those things where, like, they just kept pressuring, and then eventually you get in like a little verbal confrontation. They didn't like it, and then, you know, and next thing you know, we get a letter saying that we think that we should go to a different pediatrician. And to me, it's just like, you know, it is such an important issue, because I think when it comes, when we're talking about children, like, people are very passionate about their children, and I'm glad that to see so many parents who, now that they become parents, they're much more conscious of GMOs, pesticides, vaccines, because maybe when it's about their bodies, they don't care so much, but when it's their kid, they become much more aware. So, I think that, you know, the more the merrier. Everybody, I mean, the Vax documentary helped a lot of people open their eyes. I mean, Dell did a great job with that. I mean, I know that it kind of got labeled as a anti-vax documentary, but it had nothing. It wasn't at all. It was about basically a cover-up, a suppressed study, and a CDC whistleblower. So, you know, I hope everybody can kind of help each other out, because Dr. Shiva is another really bright guy, very respected, and I'd love to have him on our team, you know. And but, you know, I do hate all this infighting. And the other thing too is, like, we don't all have to agree on everything. You know, I've had raw food people on, I've had ketogenic, you know, I've had Dr. Dominic D'Agostino, I've had Dr. Sean Baker on, you know, I've had, you know, I think you can get something from so many different people. And you know, I've had Jack Abramoff on. I don't agree with him with a lot of shit, but if he's going to come on and expose how lobbying works, and how, you know, how easy it is to control politicians, then we don't have to agree on everything. You're bringing something to the table that's worth listening to. So I think, especially in the health and nutrition world, I think we can all agree that people get very tribal, and people get very, like, I pick a team. It's like, I'm going to stick this flag here on the paleo team, and that's me, and everybody else is bullshit, you know. And it's like, no, I mean, people can, there's so much conflicting research and information, and we're constantly learning. Like you said about Robert Kennedy, I mean, it's quite possible he just never really thought about it, you know, and somebody started, he kind of got his eyes open to the topic. And I mean, look at the host of London Real, Brian Rose. Look at the host of Valuetainment, right? Having these guests on changed their perspectives. I mean, these were very intelligent, grown adults who are now saying, like, hey, having, you know, Robert Kennedy Jr. on, having Dr. Judy on, having all these people on has now completely made me rethink this topic. You know, so I think it's a good thing. You know, hopefully we can all at least come together on the things we agree with, and realize that we're all fighting against big pharma, big food, big government. Like, we're all on the same team, fighting the same people. If not, then we end up basically creating what they want us to create. All the infighting, while the people pulling the strings are benefiting. Again, 100%. I should have a question.
I was talking to a gentleman the other night, and we were talking about his food, and, you know, so he's like, oh, so you're okay if I have this? I'm like, listen, how does it make you feel? You know, like, so it's not like everybody has to eat that way, or paleo, or gluten-free, or dairy. How does it make you feel? You know, so he's like, well, I like these food groups. I'm like, okay, well, they're all healthy, and you eat them, you know, with balanced meals. Fantastic. You know, so, and I like to eat something else because I know that that makes me feel good, as opposed to saying, oh, you have to do this 100%. It doesn't, we're not all the same. We don't have the same makeup. So we have to really personalize it, like you mentioned, personalized supplementation, personalized nutrition. That's the way it works.
But if people are so disconnected from their body because of trauma that is inflicted on them literally moments after birth, that conversation ends up, as you know, as a functional medicine provider, being the bulk of what your discussions are with your patients. I can remember when I first started practice 15 years ago, I would ask those exact questions. And my patients would say to me all the time, I don't know, I feel bad all the time. You know what I mean? They're so disconnected from their body. Their pineal glands are so calcified. They're so used to going to a doctor to get validation for their health and a teacher to get validation for their education that they have no self-awareness and no forethought to even sit with themselves, to go back to your mindfulness comment, Nancy, about, eating something and then sitting with themselves and saying, gee, that made me feel uncomfortable, or now my skin is itchy, or, I had a terrible night's sleep that night. Most people don't make that connection unless they sit in an office with a doctor that's going, or a professional that's going to guide them down that path. And I think that's what the breakdown is here, because that's what everybody did. They masked up and they said, oh my God, we're all going to die from coronavirus. Well, I shouldn't say everybody, because, in my little microcosm, we were like, well, we don't buy hand sanitizer because that's toxic. Nobody uses bleach. Let's make sure we have some essential oils and some nettle tea, and we kind of carry on like normal. And, I think that's where the disconnect is. And I think that's why fear was so motivating, and it was so easy to control the general population in this regard.
And this is why I always recommend to journal. So like I have a Google Doc with everyone that I work with. And I either have a Google form or a Google Doc. I make it as easy as possible. Do you want to click on these, questions and answers, or do you want to put your own information in? Well, you put the date, you say what you had, what exercise did you do? What was your stress level? What was your breathing? What was your this? What was your that? So they really get into seeing a pattern. But it's educational. I always say, listen, it's going to be empowering in the long term because you're going to know yourself. But it sometimes comes with resistance. But I have men and women doing this, and I'm like, thank God. But it takes years.
Kendra, what are you doing to decalcify the pineal gland? I'm always curious to hear people's responses on that.
I use zeolite. Fasting also helps, and saunas are my three kind of top recommendations. I mean, you can do all kinds of things. I've seen some stuff about gemotherapy. I'm a big advocate of ozone. But, for me, the kind of quick and dirty is some zeolite.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah, that's so you guys, obviously we're all fans of supplements, but would you guys all agree that I think you shouldn't depend on supplements to get your nutrition? Because some people think that like, oh, I can eat like crap because I took this multivitamin, or I'm taking these supplements or whatnot. Like food should definitely be your primary source of nutrition, correct?
Well, yeah, I would say that if with a caveat there, because I mean, the reality is that 85% of the nutrition is farmed out of the soil. So you're eating vegetables. Let's say they're not sprayed with pesticides, fungicides, herbicides, larvicide, chemical fertilizers, all this. They're still deficient. So that's why I supplement. Because when I first got into this work, for my own self, I was like, yeah, I'm just doing whole food. I don't want supplements or nothing, which was probably a good move because I had like a 95% chance I would get synthetics and crap. But today, it's unless you're growing in your own organic garden with your own organic soil that's just really mineral rich and you're harvesting on the spot, then yeah, you're going to have to supplement today. I would say it's a combination of both. You can't just rely on one or the other. It needs to be a synergy of both of those things.
I think it's lifestyle. You have to look at everything. Mm-hmm. So like I could say, I would always, when I do my corporate wellness, I really have to get with the executives and explain to them, how do you deal with your stress? Because you could take all the supplements, you could eat really healthy. If you're having stress, so bad. Because I used to be on the trading floor at Goldman Sachs. So half the people, they were chomping on Tums, taking Excedrin, who died of brain aneurysms. It was pretty stressful. And if they don't handle all the aspects of their life, that's a problem as well, because you may not absorb your nutrients, your mitochondrial dysfunction. You could be more acidic. So I would say you have to eat really clean for you, what works for you. And you have to be mindful to figure that out, as well as supplement, quality, not synthetic. And as well, look at your stress, your gratitude, your happiness, your movement, your sleep. So many things.
Yeah. Genetics too, because you could be genetically predisposed, like both my husband and my son are predisposed to bleeding magnesium faster than an average person, so we have to increase their magnesium. Vitamin D, there's very, very common mutations for not being able to translate vitamin D very effectively. And so those people require high doses of vitamin D on a regular basis. So having that component in there too. Or those of us that live in the Northeast, we traditionally have lower magnesium levels than the rest of the country. That's why we have higher rates of breast cancer and heart attacks and things like that than in some of the other areas of the country that have a much more riskier demographic. So I think it is a completely multifaceted answer, individualized answer, but I think it is completely and totally achievable, and I think that's where people kind of get caught up and they're like, it's just so much easier to take a pill. And if I don't feel any better, I'll take two. And that just kind of cascades and snowballs into a much larger, problem as opposed to a solution.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the reasons why people get so tribal with whatever nutritional plan works for them, because you feel good and you want to share that information. You want other people to feel good, so it's like if somebody does keto, if somebody does paleo, if somebody does whatever, vegan, and they feel good, that they're just, it's like, well, it works for me, it can work for you, and I want you to do it too. Join my cult, and I mean, I've been doing keto for a long time. I fast every day. I drink water and coffee just about throughout every single day. This is the closest thing today. I'm like cheating. This is my cheat. But I won't eat any real calories until tonight at dinner. And people will be like, "Oh, how do you do that? How do you?" And it's like, you should be able to do that. You should be able to go long periods of time without eating. You should be, you shouldn't get lightheaded. And I was one of those people. I used to go play basketball, go to the gym. If I didn't eat enough, I'd be like, oh, my blood sugar's low. I didn't eat enough. I'm getting lightheaded. And now I can work all day, play basketball, go to the gym, and I'm fine, And so I think we can learn a lot from our ancestors. People didn't have access to sugary treats 24/7. Now it's like, you spend all day snacking. People are just snacking and snacking and snacking and whatnot. So I think, yep. And so, that's going to be on the video.
Sorry about that.
No, it's okay. But I'm just like, you could just. But yeah. So I think. I
tried to be.
That's awesome.
I think that's great. It's real life.
Yeah. Well, I'm not very professional here, so I like the.
Some barking dogs aren't so bad either.
I try to keep things as casual as possible. That's why I always start the conversation immediately to kind of keep things going. Because I think, but nice thing about podcasts, it's refreshing to people that it's like the one spot that it actually sounds like you can get real people just having real conversations. And I think people are sick of TV selling you something, newspapers, everything's trying to sell you an agenda and push some type of perspective on you. And podcasts seem like it's the untouched world where you could still get some real information and thought-provoking conversations without trying to sell you anything. But no, is that your dog?
Yeah. That's the bark.
But yeah, we can wind up soon. But anything that's super important you think for people who maybe are afraid of getting sick or whatnot? Anything that you think people should focus on, or any peace of mind or anything that would give them peace of mind in regards to your opinions on the virus or how to handle what's going on right now?
My first thought is, of course, don't ever live in fear. And don't ever think that your immune system is weaker than somebody else's immune system. I mean, that's, you're saying that somebody else is more powerful than you? That's never the case as a human. And then if all else fails, just stop eating sugar. I mean, sugar is a very known, immune paralyzer. And so if anybody is really fearful of their immune system function, getting rid of sugar is a huge benefit to the human body. And there's a gazillion other things, supplements, meditations, variety of exercises, things to strengthen your thymus gland. I mean, we could go on and on and on, but I don't think it's that complicated. I think we need to not be fearful. I think we need to trust that our bodies are made for this, and, get rid of the sugar, because that's really what has kind of perpetuated some of the chronic illness in our society anyway.
Anybody else want to?
Go ahead, Nancy.
I would say, look at what you're eating. So clean up your diet and look at your stress levels and your sleep. Because if you're already an anxious person, your adrenal system, your thyroid and hormone are out of balance, and you want to work on that. Get a quality probiotic, really work on your gut. And if you have any testing, it's great when you gain insight how your body is functioning, so whatever, I don't know, everybody's insurance covers different things, but you could actually couple a CBC with a functional medicine test to check your glutathione and vitamin C levels, depending on what state you're in, will determine if it's legal or not to run the test, but that's a whole nother story. While you gain insight on how your body works, then you could follow a personalized regimen. And I love the fact of not living in fear, because the mindset is everything. So you have to get that straight. And I think that once you have more empowering knowledge, that you have less fear.
Awesome. I would echo both of you on the fear deal, because it's not doing any good. Shut off the news and just understand, why are they fear mongering us? Why is it 24/7 watching the death count? And if you look at some stuff, I did a Facebook Live last night, and I just pointed out some facts. This was right out of Johns Hopkins. 250,000 people a year die of iatrogenics or medical errors. How come there's not a counter on that, shining light on maybe we need to improve the systems in the medical field? Again, not poo-pooing the doctors and the nurses in there, but the system's what's broken, like Karen said earlier, right? So Kendra, excuse me, what Kendra said earlier. So 250,000 a year dying of medical errors, 606,000 dying of cancer, 647,000 dying of heart disease, which we know is a toothless tiger, like Dr. Esselstyn said. It's too much animal fat, plaque buildup in the arteries, so just eat more plants. That one's solved. I mean, that's the #1 killer, right? 1.25 million killed in car accidents, but none of these things are being death counted on the news every day. And they're showing right now around 170,000 deaths with COVID, and we know those figures are so skewed. So skewed when you have senators like Dr. Scott Jensen speaking out like he's getting coerced to fill out these death certificates leading to COVID and incentivizing COVID deaths with a $13,000 payout, whereas a regular respiratory issue, he said, was around $5,000 in a hospital. So, everything they're doing, people that are on the inside telling you that, people dying of gunshot wounds are being marked as COVID deaths. And, there's a 27-year-old that just died of COVID, but they didn't tell you he was late-stage lymphoma. So every little angle is building up that death count. So just shut off the news, because it doesn't work. You can't heal in fear. There's too much cortisol, and there's too many, your adrenals are going to get blown out. Other than that, it's just, realize that we do have natural remedies. Vitamin A, green leafy vegetables, vitamin D, get your sunshine. You can supplement that stuff. Zinc, you can get that from mung beans if you can't get your hands on a good zinc supplement. And vitamin C. And for vitamin C IVs, I just want to point out before we end, when this thing all started in May 3rd, I've got an article here from the Los Angeles Times. I don't know if they've taken it down or not, but I printed it just in case they did. So this was the mainstream media that leaked this out. There was a 44-year-old Dr. Ryan Pageant who was treating elderly COVID patients, and he got sick himself. And this was a 6'3", 250-pound former football star. He got COVID. He got fever, cough, and difficulty breathing. So what did the doctors do? Standard of care. So his buddies and stuck him on a ventilator, and 5 days after that, his lungs and kidneys were failing. So how did they heal him? They did this super experimental treatment. They put him on an immunosuppressant drug and high-dose vitamin C IV. So there it is right there. For critical people, if you're worried about this, high-dose vitamin C IVs are powerful. 100 grams. Shiva has that even identified in his thing, and I've seen that echoed all over the place. I've been referring people to high-dose vitamin C IVs for lots of stuff for a long time. High-dose ozone IVs and colloidal silver IVs. All these things are natural treatments that work very effectively. They're very powerful, but a lot of it can just do with food and other stuff. Now, Ricky, you know me. Like, my company's called Chemical Free Body, so I've been kind of anti-pharma big time. But I'm telling you right now, I'm promoting pharmaceutical drugs. Hey, hydroxychloroquine and zinc works. So why not use it? Because I'd rather just people not be in fear mode, or use budesonide. I mean, that one, I don't know if you guys have seen this, but in Japan, Singapore, and Taiwan, I added it up. There's like 151 million people there, half the size of the United States. And as of July, I think it was like 13th, there was only like little over 1,000 deaths. And they're using a similar inhaled steroid like budesonide and zinc. So only 1,000 deaths. So we don't need a clinical double-blind study to tell us this. We have 151 million people stacked on top of each other like cordwood in these islands, and they're having major success, but that's not on the news. So again, the news needs to be shut off and not live in fear.
Yeah, and something you guys are hitting on that I think is super important is the mind-body connection. Like, if you mentally feel good, physically you feel good. If mentally you feel like crap, physically you feel like crap. If I have a real good workout, you know, if my body's fatigued, my brain isn't fatigued. Usually I feel great mentally.
Exactly.
People love dogs.
They make you happy.
They're good for your immune system, right? They bring more bacteria into the gut.
The microbiome, right?
That's right.
Yeah. Well, that's why
get a dog. Go adopt a dog. You want to boost your immune system?
Everybody's adopting dogs. That's the best part. And chickens. Everybody's got backyard chickens now.
Yep. See, just by we're all smiling just talking about dogs. That's what it's all about, man. It's about boosting the frequency. You know what? It's blowing my mind. I'm so excited about. I believe there's a movement to people tuning into a higher power and moving into spirituality more than I've ever seen. Like, just everybody I'm coming on to talking with on these podcasts is talking about being mindful and being, you know, and plugging in and meditation. And like 5 years ago, you really didn't hear much of this stuff. And now everybody. So I think that's the gradual movement. This is like a big wake-up call to spirituality is what's really happening here. And I think when that sucker takes hold, we hit about 12.5% of the population. Man, then the early majority is going to come in, and then we're going to really see some movement. People are just going to let go of all this stuff and stop living in fear and just start loving people and understand that when people are harming us, it's just because they're hurting inside. And the secret ingredient is always going to be love.
Well, yeah, part of my devotions every day. I didn't mean to interrupt you, Ricky.
No, it's okay.
You know, this whole thing where everybody's really threatening New World Order and vaccines and microchips and scans and cashless society. And, you know, what I tried to do very early on is flip it around. And we're not going to go into a New World Order. We're going to go into just like you said, Tim, into a great awakening, you know, of conscious and, you know, society and community. And we're going to, you know, the finality step here is going to be military tribunals for these pharmaceutical companies that are mass murderers. And that's going to be our freedom, not this whole New World Order where they're getting rid of free thought. And I think if we have more of that and more of this, you know, connection with a greater level of consciousness, the happier we will be as a society and the freer we will be as a society.
Yeah, it's funny because when I used to do shows on diet and nutrition, spirituality and meditation was never in the conversation. And now I just did one with I don't know if you guys know the Australian chef Pete Evans. He's real big in the keto paleo environment, but he was very outspoken about the COVID-19 situation. And 60 Minutes Australia did a whole piece on him, basically trying to paint him as the Australian Alex Jones. And but anyways, like a big part of what he talks about is meditation, spirituality, all this stuff, because I think when people thought about how do I improve my health, they just think about physical things or like inputting things in their mouth. You know, they don't think about mental things. And I mean, I think it's so important. I mean, that's why the placebo effect exists, right? I mean, it's because of the fact that if you think, you know, something's working, or if you think or you look at things differently and you think you're healing and feeling better, you can in some cases actually heal and feel better. So I think people are becoming much more wary of that and much more open to that. And the other thing, like you guys were talking about, I think they have overplayed their hand. I think a lot of the censorship makes people more intrigued with the information. I think a lot of the the over-the-top mask wearing and taking away people's freedoms and rights and all this stuff, I think it's made a lot of people who weren't skeptical before much more. What's that? Oh, yeah. I
don't know if you guys can see this, but it says it's censoring vitamin C. So doctors risk censure trying to treatment with long history safety. So they're actually going into doctors' offices in some places and actually shutting them down for prescribing vitamin C. And this is ridiculous. I mean, if we look back to like scurvy, people, it's a disease. No, it's a vitamin C deficiency. That's why they give them lemons and limes. And they called the British sailors limeys because they're eating the limes. But then the limes and lemons would spoil on the super long trips. And now they use chickpeas, you know, or back then they did. Right. So it was a nutrient deficiency, you know, so it always points back to that. So why are people getting sick of all kinds of stuff today? Well, we have one of the big factors is a nutrient deficiency. And maybe one of the biggest nutrients we're missing is love.
Yeah, Do you guys sell that in your supplements?
Vitamin C?
No, love. Hugs, maybe hugs.
Oh yeah, there's tons of love in that, baby.
But
jar of love.
Nancy, did you want to add something?
I would always say, when I pray with my family, I always say, let us empower and inspire others, both personally and professionally, through our actions. So that's love.
Yeah. I mean, that's why even when we're having these conversations, I always try to throw a joke in and try to be like, because it can get depressing sometimes. And it's like, if we get depressed and we get sad and we get down, it's only hurting our energy levels, our health, and we need those things to be able to, enjoy life, experience life, and then fight back against the people who aren't letting us enjoy life and experience life. So that's why I think these health podcasts are so important, because it is information that can change people's lives right now and can affect people's lives right now. If I do a whole show on geopolitics, it's like most people are like, okay, that was great information, I learned some things, but it doesn't affect my life right now. And so I think that's why this stuff is so important. Do you guys have anything coming up? Anything you want to promote? Anything around the corner that you guys want to, or just actually let people know where they can get in touch with you, connect with you, learn more about you if they want to connect?
Sure. I'm at drkendrabecker.com. I have a couple of conferences coming up in the next couple of months. I have a couple of new ventures that are starting, so I'll leave the mystery with that. And other than that, just around spreading the truth.
I could be found at nancyguberti.com. I'm on Facebook, and I post everything I eat on Pinterest and Instagram, and I have a total wellness empowerment online membership where we don't get censored because it's password protected.
Nice.
Very nice. You guys can just reach me at chemicalfreebody.com. And also there's a link on that website, or you can check me out at the Health Hero Show. That's my podcast, Health Hero Show.
Awesome. Well, Thanks everybody for being with me. We'll have to do this again, and I promise I'll be on time next time. And Kendra will bring the dogs. I'll bring some cats, because cats really helps with YouTube hits. You get more views with cats. So no.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks guys. I really appreciate your time, and we'll reconnect soon.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Ricky. Nice meeting you, ladies.
You too.
Take care.